All right, welcome guys. Still the creative diet here. We're still in the graphic design retreat session, and today's class we're going to be looking at typography. Now, typography is a very broad aspect of design. Typography covers a very wide aspect of graphic design. As you know, graphics is not just about when we were discussing about graphic design elements in our previous sessions. We were not just looking at graphic design in terms of usage of pictures or lines or drawings or photos. You know, there are other aspects of graphic design, and one of those elements that we listed out as an element of graphic design is typography. All right, now so here we're going to be looking at just specifically focusing on typography as an element of graphic design, and we're going to be looking at how to make the best out of typography in design. All right, so I'm going to first of all, before we begin to explain what different aspects of typography, let's look at what typography is. Now, typography refers to the use, arrangement, and interpretation of text in design. Alright, it refers to the interpretation, how you use text, how people interpret your text, how people interpret your type. Right, it is the art and technique of arranging type to make written language legible, readable, and appealing when displayed in any format, whether in print, in video, online display. All right, it is the art and technique of arranging typography to make written language legible, readable, and appealing. All right, when we are trying to make text readable, trying to make the objective of typography actually is to make text readable, legible, and appealing. All right, when displayed in any format, whether in print, in video, online display. So typography is very broad. In print format, typography can be on shirt, it can be on paper, it can be on poster, it can be on metallic surfaces, it can be on books, it can be on various method of print media. All right, so basically the objective of typography is to make text or type to be aesthetically pleasing, to be visually appealing, to be pleasant or readable or legible, so that it can pass the accurate information to the viewer. Right now, so there are three fundamental principles of typography, which, like I've been reiterating: legibility, readability, and aesthetics. That is the visual appeal. All right, so these are key factors you consider when working with type. Now, there are different aspects of typography, and there are different things to consider. Now, the first thing that comes to mind immediately is the style of your typography. Now, when we talk about style, we're actually referring to the manner in which your lettering appears. Okay, we're looking at the manner in which your lettering appears. Now, letters come in many different shapes and styles. Okay, now the different ways which letters appear can be very significant. They are actually very significant. In the olden days, when typography was first invented, of course it wasn't digital, it was handwritten, it was in form of calligraphic styles, using the brush strokes, using hand it was hand formed. Okay, now these styles later evolved into digital styles as using digital methods to create typography. All right, so we are going to have to look at the background foundation of typography as we look into the styles. Okay, now there are different categories of typography, and the very first style, or the very first category of typography is referred to as the serif fonts. Okay, now in typography, serif refers to a small line or stroke that is attached regularly to the end of a larger stroke in a letter or symbol within a particular font or family of fonts. Alright, now you can see here that I have different family members of this family called the serif fonts. Okay, now what serif means is basically this protruding end. Let me just highlight this protruding end of this text. Okay, this protruding end of this text is what we call the serif. Okay, you can also notice it here at the bottom too, and also at this edge. Now if you look at each text, each letter here, you can see here that the protruding extensions, they go through all through the text. They go through the text. Okay, so that's what we refer to as serif. Okay, so this serif, it's a protruding extension or a stroke or line, that follows each letter across the text. Okay, so now for serif fonts, there are different type of serif fonts. You have the humanist, you have transitional, slab typeface or slab serif, and also you have modern serifs. Okay, so these are just they are different, but they just represent the different aspects of how this serif font evolves across the age, across time. Okay, so humanist font here, you can see it's kind of slender and looking so luxurious, and it portrays this feeling of luxury, this feeling of this slender serif, pointed edges. Okay, while for transitional is basically a transition between the humanist and modern. Okay, it's a transitional typeface between the humanist and modern, just a bit of a merger between the transitional and the modern. It's slimmer, just like the modern, but also has or retains the serif type, of the transitional, just a bit of the humanist serif type. The strokes are more straight, more fixed in a way. They are more rigid. That's the word. Yeah, that's the word. The transitional serifs are more rigid, in contrast to the humanist serif fonts here, which appear to have some curves, some indenting, some smooth projections. Okay, but the transitional is more rigid. They are more fixed, more sturdy than the humanist. All right, while the slab, look at the slab serif, you see they are wider, broader, thicker, basically like a slab, like a thick block. Okay, they are more block-like in form. Okay, and then you see the modern typeface here. Okay, also looking slender and rigid. Okay, So this is for the serif font style or type style. Okay, so see the difference between the serif and sans serif. Now what sans, this word sans here simply means none or not having, less. That's what this sans here means. Okay, so you can see that with serif font you can see that the protrusions are present, but for sans serif font you see that there are no protrusions. It's just smooth, just plain. Okay, now take note of these terminologies because they will help you when you want to search for fonts online, or when you want to try and in logo design, when you are working with type, it will really help you out an understanding of these differences. Okay, so now still on style, let's look at sans serif fonts. Now sans serif fonts do not contain strokes, okay, or feet at the edges of the letter forms. Okay, and they became popular in the 20th century, and they also had a calligraphic influence. So you can also have there are also some forms of the serif fonts that also transitioned into the sans serif. Now you can see here, you see humanist typeface here, and you can also see a transitional typeface, and then you can see a geometric typeface. Okay, so personally I favor the geometric typeface of the sans serif more. Okay, I use a lot of geometric in my design. Okay, now also still sticking with style, here we have the cursive. Now this can either be a script or a brush script form. Okay, a script or a brush form, sorry, or even a decorative, and can also take on a decorative look. Okay, now script letters imitate handwritten or calligraphic styles. They look like something that like your normal handwriting. Okay, so you can see the basic difference between a script and a brush typeface here. Okay, now brush faces are similar to scripts, but they basically try to mimic a brush stroke, like a paint brush. So they are not as elegant as script fonts. Okay, but they imitate the imitate rather the script font. So let me quickly, there's something I want to quickly show us. Let me show us a portion of this my slide here that would display the different aspects of typography here. You see this, I displayed this slide for us when we were looking at typography as an element of design. Now you see sans serif, you see serif, you see slab serif, you see rounded, you see script, you see black letter, decorative, and abstract. Right, these are different forms in which typography can exist in. Okay, which writing or text format can exist in when you are typing in design. Okay, so back now to style. Now also under style we have the black letter typeface. I'm just looking at this individually now. The black letter typeface is talking about those Gothic or medieval kind of writing. All right, the Gothic or black letter style has traditional felt tip calligraphy at the base. Okay, you can see at the base of each, it tapers downward. Okay, you can see how it's tapering downward, like pointing downward. If you remember very carefully, if you are very familiar with brands in Nigeria, Gouda. If you remember Gouda very well, their typography, their logo type is a black letter type, like a medieval type. Okay, so when you see this type of typography, they're talking about olden days, the old days, you know, those times when typography was initially invented. You look at all those legendary or epic typefaces. Okay, those typefaces that were used to describe all those warlike warriors, old time warrior fonts. So it's Gothic. These are what we refer to as the Gothic. So you see that one thing that characterize them is the sharp, straight, and angular lines of each letter. Okay. Now, when working with type and arranging paragraphs on a page, we need to pay attention to a few factors and make sure that the thing we are designing will be legible and clear. Except of course if you are creating something that is abstract, something that is your maybe legibility is not your core focus in the design. But if legibility is important to you, and especially if you are going to be printing it out, then you have to make sure that you are obeying the rules of typography. So we are going to be looking at some terminologies. Okay, some terminologies involved in type. Now, first rule or terminologies that is involved in type, here we have alignment. Now, alignment refers to arranging a body of text on a page, more specifically aligning its edges to those of the page. Now, there are 4 types of alignment. Now, bear in mind that none is less correct than the other. They simply have different looks and express different vibes. Okay, now these different types of text alignment can be used based on the different aspects or the different or depending on your design project and what you're actually trying to achieve. Okay, now the first example I have here is flush left. Now, even in this document I'm using on my slide, I used flush left. Now, this is the most commonly used type of alignment that it follows the natural flow of most languages. Alright, in English language we write from left to right, right? Right from left to right. So in flush left typography, we are writing from left to right. When using this alignment, one must pay attention to creating a well-balanced right edge with rows and lanes that have a natural feel. Okay, make sure to avoid loan words on new rows. Now, I have a sample on the next slide that I will use to explain this. Now, these loan words are called windows, and it's not very pleasant to have them. Now, you see this is an example of a loan word on a row. Now, each row here, you see this row, see another row, see another row here, another row, another row, and another row here. These rows coming is a row. Is a row. Here's another row here, and then here's the third row here. Okay, so it's not right to keep or allow words to appear alone. Okay, especially when you are using a left alignment, or when you are using a flush left rather. Sorry, when you are using a flush left or a left alignment on your text. Okay, so it's good to allow the text to be balanced. Okay, remember the principle of balance again. Now we are looking at that principle in text, in typography. Now, so you see here that this particular aspect of the paragraph text is protruding too much to the right. Okay, so it's best to make the rows as even as possible, as you see here. So you see here now the text is more properly balanced. Okay, as we flush the text left, try to make sure that the columns are as balanced as possible. Right, now still on alignment, we are next type of text alignment we have is the flush right. Now, opposed to the flush left alignment, the flush right goes against the natural flow of most written languages. Okay, most written languages. I think the only language, if I remember correctly, that uses the flush right is the Arabic text. Okay, so with flush right, the alignment or the text, moves from right to left. Okay, now this alignment is very, very critical. Use this alignment in only in some critical cases. Okay, I also make use of it at some times just to create some balance in my overall design. Now, be mindful though that this alignment creates an unusual look and can be hard on the eyes when used in long paragraphs. So in order to have a clean right edge, try to avoid lots of full stops or commas at the end of the rows. Very, very important. Very, very important. So let's look at examples. So you see here what we're trying to say. Now this row is too long. Okay, you see the row here is too long. The length of the row is too long. It's not making it comfortable enough for us to read. You see here now there's a comma, there's a comma here. Okay, there's an inverted comma here. There's an inverted comma here, so it's not wise or it's not good to have this. So you see this full stop, so try to reposition the full stop. Okay, although I do not advise this, so if I was going to do this, the right way it should appear is to break this B and put it on its own line. Okay, but all the same, you see the general principle we're trying to create. Okay, the general principle we're trying to create here is to have, when you are using a flush right, okay, make sure that the rows are not too long, because it's an unnatural way of reading text. Now justify, this is my favorite type of text alignment, and I use it especially in print formats when I'm working in print documents or in printed jobs, okay, like books, magazines and the rest. Okay, so now for justified alignments, although it can look modern and clean when done well, justified alignment can go really wrong very fast. And the reason for that is because it's an automatic style of alignment. Okay, it automatically tries to make your rows equal. Now if the words are not equal on the row, it can give your text a very odd look because of the kerning. Now I'll explain what kerning is shortly. Okay, but let's look at what we're trying to talk about. You see the kerning here. What kerning is basically talking about is the space in between your letters. Okay, so it automatically adjusts the kerning if you leave a window. You know what we talked about when we said a window is a lone word on a row. Okay, so if you have a window in your text, all right, it will automatically adjust the kerning to fill the row. Okay, so that's what with justified text alignment. Okay, so there's a way to, there's a way out of that though. You break that row and add more words into that row so that you eradicate or remove the lone word or remove the window on that row. Okay, so here now you see that is a perfectly justified paragraph text. Okay, now centered alignment. Now if done poorly, centered alignment can look rather boring and messy. With a lot of attention though, it can create an dynamic feel. Okay, I'll be showing us examples of how I make use of this text. So you see here now the row is too long. See, the row is too long. And then here, see how it's properly balanced. Okay, it's properly balanced here. This is the right way to make use of the center alignment when you're making paragraph text. Alright. See how aligned it looks now. See how aligned it looks now. The rows are making at least more equal, more balanced. It looks more stable. Like it's easier to read. Okay, see how balanced it looks now. You can easily read across the text like this. Okay. So now we're now looking at the next terminology in typography, which is leading. Okay. Leading. I'm coming, I will explain what kerning is in a bit. Let's look at leading. Now, leading refers to the distance between two lines of text. Okay, the distance between two lines of text, that is this first row. Now, this first row, distance between this first row and the row beneath it. Okay, so that's what leading is. Okay, by adjusting it, we can play with the texture, color of the paragraph, creating visual interest and building its sense of hierarchy. Alright, the optimal size of the line spacing depends on various things such as volume of words in relation to the usable space, display size. Especially for me, display size. Display size is one of the most important factors that you consider when you are trying to use leading. Okay. Okay, so now we see some examples of how leading is used in typography. You see here this first example on the left here. You see this first example here. You see how jam-packed and compressed text appears here. Okay, now this is an 18-point line spacing. Now stay away from it. It's very it's not making the text easily legible. Okay, so you see how difficult it is for us to try this. Okay, now this is a 21-point line spacing. You see how it's looking much better here. Now you see the spacing is suitable. Okay, and then to make it even here, 24-point line spacing. This is advisable to use, or sometimes 21 spacing depends the space of the space you have for displaying type. Okay, so just all about legibility. So when we talk about the line spacing, we're actually talking about leading. Okay, the text. Alright. Use another example of line spacing again. And again, for example, if we're reading point, for example, you can say, okay, you may see a 40-point line spacing, in that point, or for example, the lyrics of a song, for instance, so you can see how line spacing can be used to show hierarchy, to show proximity in typography design. Okay, so again here you see this 36-point line spacing, then you see 30-point line spacing. Alright, so these are different ways to make use of leading. Alright, so now talking about tracking is another terminology in the typography design. Tracking is a process of adjusting the overall space between letters. Alright, the overall spacing between letters or letter spacing. Okay, in most cases, one will apply positive tracking rather than negative in order to create a more open and airy composition. All right, and I'll explain more clearly what tracking refers to. All right, the bigger the text gets, the bigger the space between the letters gets, and so the tracking needs to decrease. Similarly, if the text size gets smaller, we need to increase the tracking. Okay, so what that means is that what tracking is talking about is increasing the space in between individual letters in the word paragraph. Okay, and this is very very important, especially logo designing for designing text for logos. Right, this can be very very crucial. I'll give an example. Before I do that, let me just show you an example of what tracking is all about. Let's take for example, type this word. For instance, see, I just type this word and I'll go to my shape tool here. Let's see. Okay, now shape tool and click on this arrow pointing towards the right and then drag. You see what I did? And this is what tracking is. Now this is positive tracking because I'm increasing the space in between individual letters. See, I'm increasing the space in between. Negative tracking, like what I said, or text in the write-up explaining this term, is when you reduce the space in between. You see here, like I just did. Now this is negative tracking because I'm reducing the space. We will have positive tracking if I was increasing the space in between. So this is a positive tracking, while this is negative tracking. All right. Now, negative tracking can be used when the default spacing within the text is too wide. Then you reduce. And I'm not talking about negative tracking, but if the spacing between the text, the default spacing between the letters are not suitable, then you can put it to increase. All right. So, and I'll explain an example. Of this. Okay, take for instance, like when I was explaining about logos. Let me just use this to explain. Okay, like you can see here, this logo. You can see how the space appears in between here. So you can see how tracking comes into play. You see the space in between the letters of the consorts here. You see how I applied positive tracking to this text here to make it more balanced with what the text might appear. Yeah, there's a very important tip. Now, tracking is more useful. You are working with uppercase letters, like you see here. The keyword here, investment, is in lowercase, while the word which I applied tracking to is in uppercase at the bottom here. You see that? So it's more tracking is more useful for uppercase letters than lowercase letters, right? So you see here how I applied tracking to this logo type. All right, you see, text is basically default. So I think this was the default tracking space in between the letters. While for this code, you see I applied tracking for uppercase letters here. All right, so that's the very important tip. When apply tracking to letters. The lowercase letters require less tracking than uppercase letters. Alright, and that's very important. important now. So let's go back to kerning. Now, kerning refers to modifying the space between individual letters. While tracking is talking about adjusting or modifying the space across board, the whole paragraph text or the whole artistic text. Kerning is basically talking about adjusting in between letters, like you see here now. For instance, here, like in this, if you look at this text here, notice it looks as if the space between this Y and this T is kind of looking wider. And the reason why it's looking wider is because there's a slope. The edge of this Y, capital letter Y, is looking slanted and indented. So the space in between is looking wider. You see that now? So the same thing here, like we said here, for kerning, kerning, it's more commonly appear along letters like A, W, and T. You see that now? So to adjust this, what I'll do is I can come here, click on this letter Y, this node here, using my shape tool, and then just drag slightly to my left. And you see now, you see what I just did now, this kerning. See how I adjusted it? It's now looking better in comparison to this. You see that? So this is what kerning is talking about. Alright, this is what kerning is talking about. So that's the difference between kerning and tracking. Alright. So okay, here you see how tracking was applied to this example. So you see here on the left, you see this in static tracking. This might feel a bit too tight and heavy on the eyes. You see this now. See this. So this may feel too heavy on the eyes too. May be a little bit more difficult and less legible to read. So this here, in the middle example, the tracking has been applied. But yeah, the tracking that has been applied here is not so much, right? It's a small level of tracking, right? So while for the last example I have here, you see I increased this tracking is an increased level of tracking, a plus 25 level of tracking. But again, for some people this may feel a bit too loose, so you just need to adjust to achieve some visual aesthetics. All right. So next, okay, I've explained this before. All right, so I guess next now we're going to be looking at the anatomy of type, or the anatomy of typography. All right, typography anatomy. Now, what typography anatomy is basically talking about is dividing the text into different parts. Now, type is just like you see the body of the organism. The body of a living organism is going to be divided into different parts, right? Just like anatomy refers to. Anatomy is talking about different parts of the system. Alright, so now for typography of text also has an anatomy, right? And we're looking at that here in this slide. Alright, so now for the anatomy of type, I'm taking an example here, slab serif. Okay, here you can see that the diagram has been labeled. You see here the slab. Alright, you see the height from the bottom of this slab to the top of the slab is the cap height, and then below, like for letters like Y, like letter Y, sometimes I think letter L, sometimes, but more importantly for letter Y and G, letter Y, letter G, those letters that have a descender, those letters that have some parts of their letters going beyond the baseline, right? So these are letters that they have some portions of their anatomy going beyond the baseline. You see here in letter Y, some aspects of the letter goes beyond the baseline. So you have a descender line that is able to mark the bottom. Okay, and then you see here in between this space you have the counter. There's an enclosure inside. There's a counter here, and then there's also a counter here. This is very, very important when you're working with type, especially with when you're working in softwares, vector illustration softwares like Adobe Illustrator and CorelDRAW. Very, very important when you start modifying text. Maybe when you do a convert or curve and break apart, this counter can be very, very important in typography, especially in logo designing. Okay, so here you are going to be looking at a much more detailed aspect. Okay, so you see how this anatomy comes into play in actual paragraph text. So you see the baseline here, then you see the descender line, which marks where the portion of the text goes beyond the baseline, and then you see the x height. The x height is basically the normal height of the lowercase letters. Okay, and then you see here, of course, there are some portions of the lowercase letters that are protruding above the x height, which is also going to which we refer to as the ascenders. The ascenders. Okay, and there's an ascender line that marks the tip of those ascenders here. Okay, and examples of letters that have ascenders are letter H, small letter H, small letter T, small letter D. Those letters have ascenders that go beyond, or portions of the letters that go beyond x height. Okay, so this is basically the anatomy of type. Some ascenders may stay below the cap height, while others may extend beyond it. Alright, the round letters, like you see here now, the round letters, we have a slight overshoot extending beyond the baseline and x height. Okay, now here we have a spine. You see, this is the spine. Here, this curve for this letter A is called a bone. Now this inner curve here on the inner side here, you see this now, this is called the aperture. And here the terminal part of this serif looking, this actual type here is actually sans serif. Now, but this extended portion at the bottom here is called the terminal. Then for the M, for letter M here, or letter N, this curve at the tip, the edge of the curve is called the shoulder. Okay, here it's called this is stem, is the crossbar. Here it's called the counter, like we gave an example there, the curve, the enclosed portion or the inner portion of the text. Okay, here we have the leg, that's the portion of like this letter K here, and then the leg is like the bottom part of the letter K, while the upper part is called the arm. Now for letters like letter E or capital letter R, for example, now this counter is called I. Alright, so this is basically the anatomy of type. So with that, we come to the end of this particular session. So in the other classes that we have in type, we're going to be looking at font psychology and looking at custom typography and much more in typography. So thank you very much for staying tuned and be attending to questions after you watch this video.
The light will shine on me.